Tonight we're here to welcome Corey Koura. Corey served in the U.S. Coast Guard for 27 years. He enlisted in 1991 and worked as a machinery technician, became a chief warrant officer, and received final appointment to the grade of lieutenant. He served on a multitude of operational platforms and a special assignment as a company commander and recruiter. He has had first-hand experience of all Coast Guard missions from the desert in the Middle East, Caribbean Sea, East and West Coasts, Caribbean Sea, East and West Coasts, Hawaii, and the Bering Sea. Corey is also a car and motorcycle enthusiast. When he was 16, he bought a 1956 Pontiac and still owns it today. He has owned a 72 Mach 1 for 25 years. In 2005, he built and registered his own car. That's the one that's out front, right? If you saw the little blue car, that's it. Corey started collecting motorcycles after the purchase of a 1994 Harley XLH. His collection spans from the 1940s to 2015 with BSA, Triumph, Norton, Ambassador, Montgomery Wards, Harley, Ducati, is that how you say it? Moto Guzzi. Yeah. I watched a video on that one. Earl, and others. A small part of this collection can now be seen in the room next door. I think everybody got a chance to look at it. If not, you can see it after our presentation. Please welcome Corey Koura.
Hello, my name's Corey. It's been 448 days since I bought a motorcycle. Wait, that's the wrong type of meeting. But, so it's our enthusiasm with automobiles. So I like to I don't mean to pick on anybody's age, but an age that I'm really jealous of. Anybody 75 to 80? You, sir.
Yes.
What is your favorite car you've owned?
Favorite car that I own? 56 Ford.
What car did you learn how to drive on?
42 Chrysler.
Okay. So a lot of times they match up. And the reason why I love this generation is they gotta buy a 55, 57 Chevy for $50. Because they were coming at 18 when these cars were starting to be 10, 12 years old. So it was like $50. They had a running car, and they could, within $200 buying 4 cars, they could have their hot rod car that they've always dreamed of. And while they were 14, 15 years old, they could go out to the local coffee shop diner and actually see the new Fords, the Dodges, the Mopars, the Chevys roll into town on the car carrier. And that was the first time they got to see that body style. It was just like, hey, did you just see the new Fords that came out? Did you see this new Galaxy, Ford Galaxy? And they started falling in love with the newer cars, seeing at this. But that's just something I miss. Because if I sit at a coffee shop, I see, I'm like, are they new or are they old? Because the body styles don't really change after maybe 8, 10 years. But I get to get the clicker. So the passion all started at age of 16. So I picked this beauty up when I was probably around 24 years old. 73 Mach 1 Mustang. Does anybody know what movie a 73 Mach 1 Mustang is famous in? Not Bullet. Gone in 60 Seconds. Not the Nicolas Cage one, the cool one with the big 45-minute car scene with Eleanor is a 73 Mach 1 yellow and black. I had this car for 5 years before I knew the movie existed. I was was TAD, temporary sign duty, in San Pedro, California. Took the Mustang down, and I happened to stop in Long Beach. The whole town was going nuts. The police were just tracking behind me left and right. Everywhere I stopped at a stop sign, it was thumbs up like insane amount. And people are they shooting a new movie? What's going on? I finally pulled over, the cops, they're like, yeah, we don't see too many Mach 1 Mustangs, especially a 73 roll through town. And then I learned all about the movie. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I really just love the car. First Ford I ever owned, and Ford, Chevy, there's a lot of differences. And so I wanted to learn the difference between a GM and a Ford. The biggest difference is the distributor is a lot easier to work on. So that's me at my prime, 16 years old, and have no clue what I want to do. That is my 56 4-door 870 Catalina after the recent purchase. And so this is how I got started in the whole thing. And then, of course, had to make life choices. My number one thing, I was like, okay, number one goal I was just win the lottery. Okay, gotta have a backup plan. Went over when I was 17 and talked to the Coast Guard recruiter and signed up that day. So, throughout my last 2 years of high school, I restored it, drove it to school, back and forth, drove it to many duty stations, Seattle, California area. Well, this is not in its prime. It's about 5 years after the restoration. She still looks good. I was just like, okay. Well, now I'm traveling all over the world, so storage, hey, Dad, can you store this? My brother, hey, will you store this car for me? So it didn't get the inside storage that I really wanted. That's it a week ago. So if you looked at the first picture when I was 16, 35 years later, I think my restoration was better than GM or Pontiac. So I still got to go through and clean it up, and it's still, it's my career in the Coast Guard as a mechanic. If it wasn't for this car, the simple, basic engineering, electrical, I wouldn't have succeeded as far as I did, because I went into the Coast Guard as a mechanic, a lot of diesel engines, moved into jet turbines and all sorts of stuff, but this was the basic how I got started. And so it's just one of those things, I kind of owe a lot to this car for my career and my now retirement. All right, but the bikes. Oh, I think I got one more car. Seen it out there. I got bored. I needed to learn about fuel injection. I knew all about diesel fuel injection, but gasoline and just automobiles, superchargers, and all that. So I was just like, I'm going to build me a car. Ordered a frame. They're a racing company. They're like, we'll build you whatever you want, what size engine you want, what 4-inch tubular frame. We've got multiple bodies. I can go with the GT40. I can go with the Daytona. I was just like, no, I'll go with the AC from England. And everybody, the Cobra is actually an English car with a Ford engine. All right, so I built this. Every wiring, if someone's ever done fuel injection and looked at the wire, every wire from each injector to a stock 87 50 Ford computer runs this. And I've so modified this car, and the computer self-learns, and it's just like, it's technology that's unheard of today. because even on the newer vehicles or motorcycles, you change spark plug types, or you change the intake to a different paper, to a different style filter. You have to have it reprogrammed. This thing from 1987 learns everything. And especially I sat there when I bolted on the supercharger and turned it over. It didn't like it at first, but after it sat there for 5 minutes, it leveled out, took it out for a drive. After 50 miles, it runs perfect. But if I disconnect the battery, it's 50 miles of relearning all that stuff. But, so I guess it's a good accomplishment to go to the DMV and actually, okay, who's the manufacturer? I am. Where's this? I am. Well, where? Well, it's all me. And they were just like, wait, no way. And I had to pay taxes on the frame construction that I had built in Boston. And so that was, I was surprised at that. And I was like, here's the bill for $9,000 that I have. And they're like, okay, we'll tax you off of that. So, basic frame. That's what we call a rolling chassis. That's a 302 that I found. Rebuilt it. Put some high-end horsepower stuff, which I don't need. Because I didn't know anything about physics. The weight of the car, size of the back tires, the biggest that will fit on there. I can only put 218 horsepower physically to the ground. And so anything after that's called fun power. So I guess I got a lot of fun power. And that's right before paint, and that's, my neighbors really loved me. It's got positive traction. I took the limited switch off, limited slip off. All right, so shop. So being retired military, you don't really have that much income, but yeah, I decided I wanted to buy a mill and a lathe. I bought an old lathe, an old 1948 South Bend, made lots of stuff on it, and then I'm like, well, I need a mill. Well, a mill came available on Craigslist, a CNC lathe mill. And the guy's just like, he hooks it up to the computer and it kind of does some stuff, and I'm like, well, I can still use everything manually, and that's really what I want to do. But it's supposed to be a CNC. So this is 1988 technology. It's called a step card. Your computer printer port, this is how long we're going. Remember the printer ports that were like this wide? Sends the signals to these little devices to turn on and off, and it rotates the motors. Nobody on the internet or anybody could help me out. So I had to go one step further and rewire the whole thing with modern step cards and a USB reader. So there it sits today. I put a Sharpie pen and a piece of wood in there, and I drew something out on my computer, and I carved it out. The CNC works, but I'm not mass producing any of my motorcycle parts. It's always one-off. The cool factor is, and I don't know if you can see it, but right there, that's an Xbox controller. So I can program, if I go left, right, up, and down, it will move 0.3 of an inch per second, or I can have it zoom. So I can just stand back and I got everything okay, left, right. Instead of having to sit there and switch everything back and forth, I just, and then I was like, I showed my wife, and I was like, watch this, see, I go this way, and now I need to get at it, so I need to move everything really fast, and then I hit the high speed on the gun triggers. Little handles were spinning so fast, they were flying. And I mean, the table just went whoop. I was just, what? I was like, this is cool. But I got a new modern, bigger lathe. It's made for gunsmithing, so I'm actually able to really get some higher tolerances. So before we go on to motorcycles, I also smelt. I don't do anything really high end, but to make a cosmetic part, I'll take soda cans, beer cans, and I melt them down, and I make myself little biscuits or blocks or whatever, and then I'll do sand mold, and I'll take the purified aluminum and go through, and then I'll have whatever, and I'll use either sander, my mill, my lathe, to try to recreate a part that I cannot find. Because some of these are hard to find parts. So motorcycles, do I like puzzles? Yes. The yellow BSA, I needed a few parts for, and the prices started getting way up there. And I was just like, you know what? There's somebody in Minden selling a 72 BSA Thunderbolt for $300. So me and my dad hop in the truck and we go down and case after part, and we had what we needed to finish up the BSA. Then my dad starts talking to a guy in England and says, what are you using for a donor bike? My dad's like, oh, it's a 72 Thunderbolt. And that guy's like, what color is the frame? And my dad's, it's gray. He's like, you're joking. He's like, send me a picture of a scratch on the frame and the frame. So my dad found his little scratch. It's gray, yellow primer, and then steel. And the guy's like, you've got one of the most rarest 70 BSAs out there. So all that money I needed to save on the BSA, now I gotta invest to get this thing back up. So what happened was they came out with this gray paint for frames. Who here would buy a bike with a gray frame? That's what they found out when they brought them over to America. Somebody bought this bike. 99.7% were sent back to England, stripped down, and repainted black and brought back. So this is the oddball. And that's 2 days later. Fired up. The only problem is I don't have a title. So it's a statue. Unless I find a judge to be my friend to legally give me ownership. But the bike's been in a million pieces since the receipts for some of the parts were like in the box were 1985. So this little beauty, it's an Italian Harley Davidson. Made in Italy, it's called a Harley Sprint. This is a 1962. I found this on Craigslist because I have a 1961 and I needed the top of the carburetor. They want $895 for the top of the carburetor because the 1961 is the rarest Harley Sprint because it was the first year they were imported to America. They don't know how many they make. Right now we know there's 4. I've got one. Harley's got one in their museum. A guy in Petaluma, California's got one. And then there's one in Italy at their museum. I had them take a picture. Hey, take a picture of the top. And that's the piece I needed. The problem was, this was buried. That was the dirt line. So I had to go out there with a shovel for $200 and dig this out. This was sitting in my backyard for like 6 months with the sprinklers hitting it every night. Get all the mud off. Didn't really need this bike anymore. But as I drove to work back and forth, I parked next to this Jeep or a Bronco, an old Bronco that was Chevy orange. I have no idea why it was Chevy orange. in black. So a little inspiration, and you can see here, it's got a step sprocket on there. That's their old way of adding, instead of changing out the sprocket, they just put 4 bolts, and it's a step sprocket. So this could have been one of the flat track racers, Daytona Beach. That's how Daytona, the Harley Sturgis, was all the dirt track, flat track racing, and they use these little bikes. So, but I don't know the history of it, but I thought I did a good job customizing and learning how to powder coat. All right, Royal Enfield Flying Flea. That's the one that's up on the stand. This, I sought after for so many years, and I finally found one. That's a front fender. That is a fender off of famous James that's way too big for it. But everything else seems to be period correct and in order. I was in the Middle East, found this on eBay or Craigslist in Idaho or somewhere up there, and then I paid the shipping company to bring it to my parents' house. And within, my parents picked me up at the airport. They're like, hey, welcome back to the United States. We're gonna go feed our dog and we'll go get something to eat. And I'm still just traveled for 36 hours or something like that. My parents come out and they're like, where is he? I'm riding this thing around the block. And my dad's like, how did you? He's like, never mind. It took me 17 years to find a set of fenders for this. So if you see the fenders, they're rust color and faded. 17, because I'm still acquiring some of these parts. But 17 years, and the phone call, it was like $65 for 5 minutes. Calling somebody in Africa, and they have interpreters and they're holding up. The person is talking in actual clicks and coming back to interpret it for me to buy these fenders. And the one regret I have is I didn't keep the box. The box had so many different countries. There was like camel hair stuck to some of the stickers. It was just crazy. I was just like, but that would have been a good keepsake of how hard it is to find some of these parts. But these were dropped from the sky in World War II. Okay, Royal Enfield, we got any gun enthusiasts? Just, you don't have to. So Royal Enfield Firearms, 303. They made firearms. They made guns. So this thing, this is the cage. There's a parachute up here. So the British hit the ground riding, and then the American troops, we hit the ground running with our M1 Grands back in the day. So that's a little bit of history on that one. Norton Commando. This by far is probably one of my most impressive motorcycles. It's a 750, and it's got what's called a feather bed frame. This motorcycle, just to take it off the stand and roll it on the ground, it's like so effortless. Compared to every motorcycle I've got, even something lighter, this thing, the way it tracks, and it's just amazing. So 750 carbureted. If these things didn't do 140 miles an hour when you bought it brand new, you go back to the dealership and have it tuned right. And I heard my dad tell me all these stories. And I'm like, yeah. So 750, I got a 750 Motor Guzzi. Fuel injected, brand new, computer designed, beautiful bike, looks awesome. This baby, when the Motor Guzzi's topping out in 5th gear, that's the big difference. It's like fuel injection is supposed to be the best, and I have no idea what they did with the heads and the frame, the drivetrain, to just, compared to any other 750 motorcycle I've been on, this one is by far the best. And now I know why Keanu Reeves, the actor, that's his favorite motorcycle, and he owns a motorcycle company. So I ran across this 1947 or it's 48, 47 Ambassador. I'm puzzled at this point. And so I started doing a little research. There's a very common brand back in the day was the famous James that had a Villars engine in it. British, back in the 40s and 50s, there was like 150 different motorcycle brands. This is so extremely rare. I was at the biggest museum for motorcycles, and they started asking me questions about it because they just have the black and white flyers. If you look this up on the internet, there's a couple clones that were made from famous James. But this, I can't find any information. I don't know if that's the original sprocket or if the guy owned a sawmill. But I've got a lot of people I know over in London, England that have this, and they're trying to ask around about this bike. But I've got the engine separate and all that. I just really don't know what to do with. And if I touch something on it, am I going to ruin something? Because if this is one of the last in existence, the rust is more valuable than having new paint. So, who remembers Montgomery Ward's? Was anybody around in 1968 where you could buy one of these? So Sears had their Allstate Montgomery Ward's. And what threw me for a loop when I went to look at this bike, the engine was seized up. I had to do a bunch of stuff, make my own piston rings. But this bike is a 350. Montgomery Ward's advertised 175 and 250s and 350s. And you walked into Montgomery Ward's, there was a couple 175s and then a bunch of 250s. Well, I want the big 350. We don't have it. Well, maybe I'll take a 175. You probably don't want that. You're going to grow into it. If you're a little kid, you're going to grow into it. You want to get the 250. Okay. So they had, either 1 to every 10 250s or 175 to every 250s, but nobody ever had the 350s. So it was all marketing scheme. 98% of the motorcycles were 250s. The rest were 175s, but they had to produce a 350. I know of one other one in Italy, because these were made in Italy. And the people in Italy's like, do not touch that motorcycle. Leave a little bit of surface rust on the chrome, the type of thing. They're like, leave it as is because it is stock and it is priceless, except for my fuel hose and my custom-made piston ring, because I've taken and ridden every motorcycle except for the Ambassador. 1948 PSA. This is called a C11 250. I bought this in Hawaii, of all places. It was like a Craigslist find. I was like, there's no way there's a 48. And then I saw the pictures. I was like, okay. I went to the storage facility. I went inside with the guy. We barely fit in the elevator. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Okay, we went up a couple times. So we're on the 4th floor. And then he's like, there's something important about this motorcycle, but I really can't remember. And I was just like, I'm not here to buy a story. I'm here to buy a 1948 PSA. Here's the cash. He's like, here's the clear title. He never unregistered it since like 19, '82, so Hawaii wanted every back registration. It's like, nope, I'm registered in Nevada. But right here, Queen Elizabeth's, it starts with a C. Coronation. That is an original symbol. So I was like, oh, so this could have been part of the parade lights and all that. And then Ray started digging in too. Queen Elizabeth, I don't know, watch my link, but she was kind of a badass as a young lady. She rode motorcycles like these up until 16, 17 years old. And then when she found out that I'm going to have to wear the crown, everything changed. But I had to carry this down 4 flights of stairs. Well worth it. And then there's a bigger picture of the coronation, 1953. So the bike would have been 5 years old. Oh, so the Dark Force motorcycle with the sidecar. It's a Euro. My wife, love her to death. She knew I was looking for an old BMW with a sidecar. I had to have a motorcycle with a sidecar. And I just got appointed to chief engineer on one of the Coast Guard's largest cutters. And she's just like, do yourself a favor, buy yourself a present. I was like, okay. She found this on the internet. She's like, do you know they make a Star Wars edition motorcycle? I was like, no way. Not that we're like into Star Wars, we enjoy the movies, but I was like, a themed motorcycle. Well, they only made 25. And this is 2015, and it's 2016. So I started calling, I'm in Hawaii, there's no dealership in Hawaii. So I started calling around, and a dealership in Arizona was like, came back to me, hey, they've got one in the crate in Russia, ready to ship. So we made a deal, brought it down, and so going through all the other people that own these, our serial numbers, this leads up to number 25. So I got the last. And I'm like, well, this motorcycle is the most difficult motorcycle to ride. You actually turn to turn. And then when you make a right turn, no, a left turn, get this right. A left turn, everything's good because that left tire is planted. And it's like, okay. And then I'm riding home 35 miles an hour and I got a slight curve. The tire seems to want to come up. And they said, well, put a bag of sand if you don't have a passenger. What's fun in that? You know, it's just like, it's called flying the chair. And so if you see somebody doing it, it's usually not on purpose. They're just using the balance. So I do not want to touch this motorcycle. I want to leave it completely stock and not change anything. But being a Star Wars motorcycle, I got ideas. You can see where I'm going with this. So I've already acquired a new trunk lid and the hinges. So if I take off the trunk and the hinges and hang it up somewhere in the garage, that's a 2/3 model of an R2-D2. So R2Q5 is Darth Vader's little buddy. So it wouldn't be hard to change the blue and white to black and gold. And doing a little research, this is how he sits in an X-Wing, so now I know how to make the mounting. So on the back of the trunk. And I've got a bunch of the little, they're highly advanced, the little things you can buy at Walmart, the little R2 units. You just hit a button and they'll actually go and then hit something, or you walk by and they sense you and they go beep, beep, beep. So I'm going to gut one of them out and put it in here so the back sensor, so somebody walks by the motorcycle. Not that I'm like cosplayer. I was like, man, if I got a Star Wars bike, I got to do it. And I posted my ideas, and the Star Wars fans that are like into it are like going wild. They're like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. So 1994 Sportster XLH, it started life as an 883, and that's how many cc's it was. I bought this is my first brand new motorcycle. I bought this while I was in Puerto Rico. They had the military, if you're overseas, you can buy it and wait for you to pick it up when you return to the States. So that's exactly what I did. Things started going through my mind. Oh, I gotta change this. Everywhere I went, oh, you got a little girl's bike. I'm like, this little girl's bike is faster than any of your other big Harleys. But they didn't. So I modified 1200. I put a little can of nitrous oxide on this. I had the heads done. And I went with this style of carburetor because you can drop the main jet down really fast and then put a bigger main jet up. So when you go hit full throttle and you hit the nitrous button, the mixture's good. So as an 883, I hit the button on nitrous one day, controlled environment. I took the Kevlar belt and parted it. I brought it to the dealership. There's like, these things don't break, especially on a Sportster. And then they could see how it was a tear. And the guy that was with me, he was in a Ford Lightning. Remember those back in the day? The belt ended up in the bed of his truck. So I was ahead of him for a little bit. But we don't like to tell that story because he's the Master Chief in the Coast Guard right now. We didn't do anything like that when we were young. But I thought to myself, I did the 1200, I put big cams. The nitrous hasn't been used, but it's mounted, it looks cool, so. And then to slow me down, because after I did the 1200, I thought I was just Evel Knievel road racer. So I put this front end on to chop it out and made things worse. So now, to turn the bike around, it's like 18-point turn. When you're on the road, that thing just glides. When you go to turn, that's when you're like, oh, I wish you didn't have it. But when you're on a flat road with just some nice weight, it's just a beautiful ride. So this was all done before Discovery Channel, Jesse James, Bite Your Build Off, American Chopper. I did this all pre them. And I've been to Jesse James' shop when I pulled up before I had it chopped out. That's a nice girl's bike. So that was my first and only visit to Jesse James in Long Beach. But I still follow him, I learn a lot from him. 1972 BSA, Lightning. This, when it came out, BSA was the most popular motorcycle in the world. So 1972, when this was out, oh, amazing. BSA, most popular. Birmingham Strong Arms. Does anybody have a BSA scope on their gun? Just like Royal Enfield, during war efforts, they made weapons. They probably took the pattern off the Royal Enfield 303 and actually were making them, but they stuck to optics after they shut down their factory. I think it was 1975. But now they're back up and going for the last 2 years. You can buy a brand new BSA now. But this was just the Beatles, the English invasion. It was motorcycles. It was motorcycles coming to the U.S. The little guy. So I was riding in New Jersey on my 2002 Road King. 2002 Road King. And I was like, oh, this is sticky. And I saw this at a Harley Davidson dealership. I've never seen the Boss Hoss in real life. So I had it. And I'm sitting there admiring it. And I'm just looking at this thing. I'm like, man, because they were really rough looking before they got to where the body, it was just parts hanging out. It looked like a rat rod motorcycle. And the clutch, was vacuum assist. You could physically not disengage the clutch unless the motorcycle was actually running. So if somebody stalled the motorcycle and it was in gear, they'd have to fight to get it out of gear to push it. It was a nightmare. Now they're automatic transmissions, but you manually tell it to go into gear. So at the dealership, I'm sitting there bobbing and weaving and looking, and this is 2007. So the bike was only 2 years old at this time. And he was like, hey, and it's like, I can't afford this. I'm just admiring and all this. And he's like, is that your Road King? It's like, yes, it is. And he's like, I got one question. I was like, what's that? He's like, that's 2002. And I was like, yes. And he said, is it carbureted? And with a big grin on my face, I said, yes, it is. And he's like, I know somebody that's looking for that motorcycle. It's like, really? And it looks like, and he was just like, you give me that bike in 15 grand, it's yours. $70,000 to build. And I'm like, because it's customer, they might have a couple, but they were $70,000. I was like, wait a minute. I bought this bike, used 4 years ago. It's paid off. Done. So my Road King, so I had this, and I was scared to sit on it and actually go forward. But once, you just say, okay, it's a comfortable ride. I found the extra clicker for my Road King for the security, so I called up the dealership, and he says, oh, meet me in Wildwood, New Jersey at that dealership. And I was like, okay. So I take this bike, and I roll up, and I park next to my motorcycle. My old Road King. And a guy gets up, the guy's sitting there, he's like, come on, man. And I was looking at him, I'm like, yeah, I know the feeling. He's like, but somebody rolls up in your old motorcycle, and I'm like, yeah. And he looked at me, and he was like, and I reached my pocket, and I was like, and he was like this, and he was, beep, beep. You gotta be joking. So his knees were going out. He couldn't hold up 1,400 pounds. I mean, it's balanced, but to take it off the stand, it does weigh a lot. We swapped motorcycles, and the dealership made probably 20 grand off of us. But this thing, it's the most comfortablest bike when I'm rolling down the road. Wind really doesn't affect me. I've been on my Sportster and the other bikes getting blown and sideways. I thought my Road King was nice, and this thing, so smooth. It's got a 2-speed transmission, and just like a car, you put it in drive. You have stoplights, you put your hand on the brake, torque converter, and then when you want to shift in a second, you drop it in a second. You manually tell it. It doesn't automatically shift. And it's got reverse, so I put it in reverse, hit the button, it closes the band, and under the engine power, I back up, and I could probably back up at 80 miles an hour if I wanted to. The reason why I say that, you shift, as per the book, between 60 and 120 miles an hour. Maintain speed or decelerate to shift into second gear. So the first time I did this, going probably 70, 75 on the road, and it's like, oh, I'll open her up, all right, this is good. All right, maintain speed, and I'm usually barely have this thing cracked, because there's no weight to it, it's all engine. I hit that pedal to shift into second gear, that bike just, whoop, whoop. The lady that was on the back of my bike is screaming, what the heck was that? I was like, in second gear, she'll never do that again. But you come to think about it, think of a 72 Nova or something with a Chevy 350 in it, and it's revving its engine, and the hood bouncing down. Or when it pulls off at a stop, and you see the front end kind of twist and one tire almost coming off the ground. I've started this bike up, and it's like, oh, I don't want to lift this up. And then I just got to wait for the counter torque to come fight, but it will pick itself up off the stand if I rev the engine. Just over 300 165 horsepower and 405 pounds of torque. I was laughing, my buddy came up with his big RV, 40-footer and all this, big cat pusher and all that, and his back sticker said Caterpillar, 350 horsepower. I was like, dude, my motorcycle's got more of the, he's like, well, I got more torque, and then I told him, I was like, I got 400, he's like, well, I got 650, and I was like, okay, but here, so, me, my passion, motorcycles, so I have a shop, I call it Split Tongue. And the reason why it's split tongue, it's not with pure. So snakes, I've always been fascinated with snakes. Viper, cobra, rattlesnake, every name is taken. But what do they have in common? A split tongue. So that's how I came up with the name. I don't work on anybody else's motorcycle. I've ran across people that like, hey, can you help me? Especially with the British bikes, because it's so hard to find somebody because they're positive ground frames, and a lot of times they have a hard time reversing the polarity to think how things work. But if I have somebody that's like, oh man, I've tried this, if they're doing the work themselves, it's like, I'll come over and give you a hand and we'll work through the problem. But it's always been like, hey, will you restore this? And I was like, no, I'm not going to restore something you're just going to use as a showpiece. I want motorcycles to be on the road and ridden. And that's about 20% of my collection. And every motorcycle except for the Ambassador, I'm out riding around and keeping, the tires, make sure they get a little wear every now and then. All right, so any questions?
You started out with cars, then you transitioned to motorcycles, or was there an overlap?
Cars was, I had my very first motorcycle was a Yamaha Midnight Maximum 1982. And that was a tool, I used it for transportation. And then I bought the Sportster, but my passion was always cars. But when you're traveling around the military, you could fit almost 8 motorcycles in one car spot. And so it just came, but one of the biggest things is, I like to know how things work. And every motorcycle in there has a different design, different way. And for me to just sit there, instead of just, hey, well, let me look at YouTube and watch this, I'm like, I want to see how this works. And so it's just one of those things to keep my mind going. If I find something really rare and unique, it's like, man, if I could find one of the old Kawasaki's with the Renko engine in it, oh, that would just, like, wow, sit there. But I just think the design and stuff like that, like I said earlier, how the Ford, the distributor is located a lot different than a Chevy, and it's just, you get not bored, but it's just, once you get a taste for something that it's like, hey, you just can't ask anybody, hey, can you come help me find, you gotta